In this video, we will describe how to tie a surgeon's knot in both one- and two-handed fashion when the strand held by the active hand starts in a position that is above the passive strand, or in other words, farther away from us than the passive strand. Surgeon's knots are types of flat knots. They are generally less secure than flat square knots. The primary benefit of a surgeon's knot is that the two turns of the first throw make it more difficult to undo the flat configuration of the first throw during tightening of the second throw. This hypothetically reduces the rate of non-apposing or air knots. Single post half-hitch knots can also be used to achieve desired loop tautness and are much more robust for this purpose, so surgeon's knots are never technically necessary. Nonetheless, for completeness, we will describe the technique used for tying surgeon's knots here. The prerequisites for this video are the one-handed and two-handed square knot videos with the active hand on top. The video on the orientation of tightening of flat square knots can also be applied to surgeon's knots. Here we will demonstrate the tying of surgeon's knots using our right hand as the active tying hand using a two-handed tying technique. Tying begins in the same manner as it did for the two-handed square knot. We adjust the strand length, grasp the suture in our active hand, create a semicircle with our thumb and index finger, cross the strands over our index finger, rotate our active hand through the loop, pass the passive strand to the active hand, rotate the active hand back through the loop, and hand the passive strand back to the passive hand. The active hand then releases the black passive strand. It is here that the tying of a surgeon's knot diverges from that of a square knot. Rather than tightening the throw that has now been created, the index finger and thumb of the active hand are pinched back together, and the active hand is rotated back through the loop by pronating and extending the wrist. The index finger and thumb of the active hand are then spread apart to receive the black strand. The passive hand drapes the black strand across the pad of the thumb of the active hand. The active hand then pinches the black passive strand. The black strand is passed through the loop a second time by the index finger and thumb of the active hand by supination and flexion of the wrist. The passive hand takes the black strand from the active hand, and then the throw is tightened using the same vertical and horizontal principles described in the square knot videos. The second throw of a surgeon's knot is the same as the second throw of a square knot, as demonstrated here. Of note, the surgeon's knot as shown here is less secure than the flat square knot, but it can be made more secure by performing two turns on the second throw as was done for the first throw. Here we will demonstrate the tying of surgeon's knots using our right hand as the active tying hand using a one-handed tying technique. We start similarly to the one-handed square knot by adjusting the length of the strand held by the active hand and grasping it with a modified maneuver in which the strand is pinned between the ring and pinky fingers, keeping the middle and index fingers and thumb free. A pincer-like grasp is made with the index and middle fingers positioned between the white and black strands, and the white strand is wrapped on the dorsal aspect of the middle and ring fingers, as shown here. Then the black strand is wrapped by the passive hand twice around the middle and index fingers of the active hand. The thumb of the active hand is then used to push the white strand out towards us and away from the palm of the hand, and the middle finger is simultaneously flexed, with the goal being to hook the white strand on the dorsal aspect of the distal middle finger. The middle finger is then extended and the white strand is pinned between it and the index finger by adduction of them. Tightening is then performed using the same vertical and horizontal principles described in the square knot videos. Once again, the second throw of a surgeon's knot is the same as the second throw of a square knot, as demonstrated here. But again, the surgeon's knot as shown here is less secure than a flat square knot, and can be made more secure by performing 2 turns on the second throw as was done for the first throw.